Hi, everybody. Today we are here with Narua, who is one of those amazing people that's good at a lot of things. She is a mom of two, a wife, a secretary. She is also a part-time illustrator and blogger over at Paperflow Designs, where she can also help other people channel their creative abilities to create their own online designs, which is pretty amazing. But on top of all of that, she has lived on 3 different continents in the course of her life, so we are here to talk to her today and learn about those experiences. So thank you for being here. Hi, Nadwa. How are you today?
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for inviting me. I'm doing well.
Good, good. So tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, what your family is like.
Well, I was born in Ghana, in Accra, Ghana, the capital to be exact. Basically my whole family is from there on both sides, and I lived there for like a couple of years up until about maybe 3 or 4 years old, and my family ended up moving to Sierra Leone because my dad was a diplomat for Ghana and he was posted in Sierra Leone. So we ended up moving there, and my younger brother and sister were born there, and we stayed there for another few years, like a year or two, until there was like a big change in the government, and my dad ended up having to look for different opportunities elsewhere. And so he thought, the U.S. was going to be a good fit for us because we had family in the U.S. His older sister was there, and my mom's sisters were also there. So we left as a family a little bit not knowing what to expect. I mean, we had heard some stuff from family, but you don't really know until you get there. So we ended up moving to the Washington D.C. area and settling there. I grew up there for like all the way from elementary school to high school. We moved around the Maryland area a few times, but stayed around family. And since, like I said, I had other families members there, I never quite felt too homesick because everyone, aunts and uncles and cousins were also in the area. So it was a good childhood.
That's good. Do you have any specific memories of life in Ghana or Sierra Leone, or anything that really sticks out to you as special childhood memories?
Well, since I was quite young when we left, but when I see photos of things like that happened when we were there, like birthday parties that I celebrated with my grandparents, it's funny because, I don't know what age they say like memories start happening, but when I eventually went back for a visit when I was about 14 years old, I sort of remembered seeing things. I don't know if it was just because I saw them in the photos, but things like the little stairwell in my grandparents' house, and they had like a little bookshelf under the staircase. It's like I saw it and I was thinking, oh, I remember this. I remember sitting here and looking through these books, like, when I was 3 or 4. Other things like pictures of me like on the balcony in our house in Sierra Leone. Like I remember my mom says I was really sociable. She says, oh, you talked to all the neighbors passing by, and she's like, oh, you used to speak Creole and things. I'm like, really? She's like, oh yeah, you just blended right in with everyone.
So
So
you're good at
a
adjusting
little
to
bit.
new places.
Yeah, I think I like to think of myself as a little chameleon. Sometimes like I'm not afraid of going to new places and trying new things, and maybe it's because a little bit of my childhood was I was used to moving around because when we first came to the States, I stayed with my aunt for a year while my dad was in the DC area looking for work and for like a more stable place for us. And I think my aunt has just such a welcoming spirit that I never felt out of place. And maybe I kind of kept that with me and took that with me everywhere I went, that, just because it's a new place doesn't mean you have to be afraid of it. Like people are still welcoming and people will be friendly. If you're friendly with them, then they'll be friendly with you.
That is a beautiful lesson to learn. I feel like a lot of adults still still haven't learned that lesson. That's wonderful. So was it hard adjusting, or did you feel like since you were with family and your aunt had that kind of an open spirit and atmosphere, you were okay?
I felt okay with her. I mean, I did, kind of miss my parents, but she was, had such this like giving heart and this giving spirit that I never felt like I was like, just this burden, like this kid that she kind of like had to watch for a while. She just always made me feel a part of the family. I mean, which I was, but I always got that sense that she was happy that I was around.
That's great. That's good. And did you continue celebrating, let's say, eating typical foods and celebrating typical holidays, or was it a mixture?
Yeah, once I was, with my parents again and with my other relatives in Maryland, we always ate like, well, it was a mix. I would say like during the week and, my mom worked full time and so did my dad. So it was pretty much like, easy, quick meals, I guess, like, people do just, like now, like,
Right.
mashed potatoes, mac and cheese and things like that. But she would also try to make like, big pots of our local food that we were used to eating so that we'd have it in the fridge and then we could just heat it up and eat. So it was a mixture of it, but there was a lot of typical local food, especially on the weekends. We would get together as a family. If the weather was warm, we would have like barbecues at the park. And everyone, kind of like bring something for a potluck. And it was, I'd say, 80% of, our local food and maybe like chicken wings and things like that. It was a nice thing.
What are examples of the local food? What kind of things would you have?
There's things like there's a thing that's called a fufu. It's kind of like a starchy. Think of like mashed potatoes that are kind of like glutinous. So you
Okay.
make like little balls out of that. So it's made out of either cassava or plantain flour.
Oh,
You mix
okay.
it with water and you keep mixing it and pounding it until it forms a little ball. And you eat that. So you pull the little pieces off and you eat that with soup. So that'll be like your starch part next to like your stew or your soup. We ate a lot of that, a lot of plantains, like in any way, shape, or form, boiled, fried, mashed, lots of plantain. Lots of fish too, because since Ghana is a place that's on the sea, we're used to eating like a lot of seafood. So I was used to like coming home on Saturday, like after hanging out with my friends, and the house smells like fried fish.
Sounds delicious, though.
Yes.
So now, fast forward to now, you are not in the US or in Ghana, you're in France. How did you end up where you are now?
I ended up in France because of the wonders of the internet. I met my husband online a long time ago. This was like before they even had dating apps and things like that. It was just on an app, sort of like, I don't know if you remember like MySpace.
Mhm.
Just like a place you could invite people to become your friends. And I think MySpace was more based on like music. And my husband at the time was actually, he wasn't in a band anymore, but before he used to be in a rap band.
Mm.
And he had his photo, his like avatar photo was him on a stage with a microphone. And he sent me a friend request, and I was just thinking, I don't know anyone in France. Like, who is this guy? And usually, like, I would just ignore like people who I didn't know, period.
Right.
And I was just intrigued because I was thinking, there's a guy on a stage, like, and he's like in France, and like you could read a little bit about their bio, and so like he wrote about like musical artists that he liked, and there were a lot of names that I recognized, like American hip hop artists, and I was thinking, this is interesting. Let me just accept it, and just so I can find out, like, what is this about? Rap in France. I didn't know that it was such a huge thing in France,
Yeah.
and so I accepted it, and we started talking and chatting, like, pretty regularly. We would start just first it was just sending messages, like written messages, and then we would start video chatting. And then one day he said, well, would you like to come to France to visit? You've never been to France. And I thought, let me get back to you on that. Because I was thinking, like, what if this guy's crazy? I don't know him. And I mean, even though I've been talking to him for months, and I'm not going to go there alone. But I was still, that adventurous side of me was like, I'm still curious. I do want to visit France. So I talked my roommate into coming with me at the time. And we came together, and he was like the same nice guy that I'd been talking to. He like took us on tours of everywhere all around the south of France. It was great. And then he came to New York a couple months later to visit me, and then we just stayed in contact for like months and months. And after a while, he's like, okay, where are we going? What are we doing? And I decided to come here.
That's
And I've been here ever
amazing.
since.
And you've been there, how many years has it been now?
I think 13 years. We're going
13
to
years.
celebrate our 13-year anniversary next week, actually.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So how was adjusting then from life in the US to adjusting to life in France?
I was really naive. I thought, oh, it's just going to be so simple. Like, yeah, you just learn the language because I didn't speak French either at the time. And I'm like, oh, it'll be fine because in between that time before I actually moved here, I came to visit him the first time, and then I came back again a couple months later and met like, his whole family and met a few of his friends and made some friends too. And I thought, oh, it'll be just like when I'm on vacation. That's not the case. That was not the case. Because when I came, he was working, so he would be gone during the day and working at his job full time. And I kind of just, be like in the apartment by myself. And he would like encourage me to go out and talk to people on the street. And at the time coming here, I think I knew 3 words in French, and that was it. I had taken like a little course in New York, like a little night course, and still wasn't able to. But it's like, when you learn a language in high school and then you actually go to the country and people, you feel like they're speaking like, at 100 miles an hour and you have no idea what they're saying to
Right,
you.
right.
That's pretty much how it was. But then little by little, I started getting more comfortable. I would, go to the bakery and ask for a baguette, and I wouldn't be worried about, okay, well, what if they laugh at me? And then I realized, you know what? They're probably not going to laugh at you. Like, there's a lot of tourists here, people that speak English. You're not the first person to come in there with an accent. It's fine. Just go for it. And so little by little, every day, I would start going out. I'd go to the mall and go for a walk, or I'd get on the bus and ask the bus driver for directions. And people were pretty friendly. Like once they saw that I was willing to make an effort and speak their language, even if I didn't speak it properly, or even if I made a lot of mistakes, I think they were really happy that I just made the effort. And that's really how I learned to speak French, just by going and interacting with people every day instead of just sitting in the apartment and like worry
Right.
that people are gonna laugh at me. But I was still, it still was a little nerve wracking, like adjusting to the cultural differences as well. Like for instance, in the middle of the day, like things close, like the post office and the bank and restaurants, things close. So in the US, I'm used to, if for example I'm hungry at 2 o'clock and I want a sandwich, I can just go and go get a sandwich anywhere. Things are open all the time, especially in New York. And here I would go out and it'd be like 1 o'clock and I'm like, what do you mean? Like all the stores are closed, I can't go get a sandwich. And I'm like, no, it's closed. Like I need to go to the bank, or I need to buy a phone card, everything's closed. And it would drive me insane at first. But then I started getting used to it. And then I realized, what, it's not so terrible. It's a nice pace of life that people take time to take breaks and like sit down to have a lunch instead of just grabbing something to go and eating like, in front of their computers or walking on the street.
Right. So does everyone go home between 12 and 2 for lunch, or is it just everything's closed and you have a long break?
Most things are closed and they have a long break. Like most shops, it's starting to change now, and some things are open. What they call like a continuous day, a journée continue. But before, like 13 years ago when I came, everything was just closed. And even if people didn't go home for lunch, like where I work now, we don't go home for lunch, but so we only have like a 1 hour break in lunch, but you don't do any work between that time. And if you go like to the post office, like it's just closed. You're not you're not going in there. You're not getting anything between 12 and 2. They're just closed. You just
Right.
know that you can come back at 2 o'clock, and yeah, it's just known, so everybody knows that that's the way it is.
That is kind of a nice forced break. We could use that sometimes to be forced to
Yeah,
stop and chill.
yeah. Now I appreciate it,
Yeah.
especially like in the mornings. I'll see people like when people say, "Oh, let's go get a coffee here." Like they're not just gonna run and like get a coffee to go. Like they're going to go to a cafe, sit down, and have an espresso and chat. Like that's a different concept of like, oh, let's go get a coffee, or oh, let's get a drink. Like it's gonna be probably like an hour or two.
Right. So would you say life is just in general slower? Is it more relational? What? How would you describe the culture?
It's a slower pace, and that was also a thing that just drove me crazy in the beginning. But again, like I live in the south of France, so it's also like I guess if you compare the US, like the north of America, to like I guess the southern states, people would say that things are a little slower in the south. And it's the same in France. Like things are a little slower in the south than let's say Paris or somewhere.
That makes sense.
Um, People will yeah, you'll see people taking time like to have their meals and stuff in the middle of the day, or like even after work, or especially like vacations. Like there's a thing, if the vacations happens if there's like a holiday and the holiday day is on a Friday, people will do a thing where they call it to make the bridge. So like they'll take off work, and work will be closed on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or let's say maybe on Monday. And in the U.S., we don't do that. It's like
Right.
if you take the day off, it's you taking the day off. It's like it's not just given to you at your job. They don't just close because
Right.
the holiday happens to fall on a Friday or a Thursday. So things like that, I was like, oh, okay, that's different.
Not bad, but different. So what would you say have been the benefits, or what have you learned from living in so many different contexts throughout your life?
I think it's made me appreciate different cultures, that people can be different in different places, and I can also learn from them. Like I'm not always the one who knows more, or I'm coming from a quote unquote better culture that's more cultivated or something like that. Like there's always something that you can learn from someone else. I think that's the main thing that I've carried with me by going from all these different places.
That is very true. Very, very good point. So, with that, since you've sort of been surrounded by the idea of immigration your whole life, what would you say, what has that taught you, or what are your views of who an immigrant is, or what immigration means?
I mean, in a way, I kind of feel like we're all immigrants at one point or another. Someone in our family was, and people tend to forget that. I think the immigration crisis that's happening in the U.S., there's a little bit of that we feel here in France too. There's people from the far right who are getting a lot more attention now because of the immigrants coming from North Africa, and people feel threatened. And so there's politicians on the far right who are taking advantage of that and feeding into those fears, like the same kind of thing that I see happening in the US. And I think people tend to forget that maybe if it wasn't them, maybe, but there was someone in their family who was an immigrant at some point that was faced with, negativity, and either they were welcomed or they were hated, and they had to adjust. But since maybe people don't talk about that in their families, or they tend to forget, and they think it's a new phenomenon, like, oh, this immigration, it's a new phenomenon. It's not new. People have been immigrating since the beginning of time. Like, that's, people move around the world. That's just what happens. And so I think if there was just more empathy, there's more understanding, if people knew that it's one, it's nothing new, and two, it's nothing to be afraid of, and three, you don't have to feed into the fears. Like if there's someone telling you, oh, you should be afraid of that person, maybe you should stop and think, why is that person telling me that? What do they have to gain by telling me that? So it's like, stop and ask more questions before you just believe that someone else is your enemy.
Stop and ask more questions. I like that. I like that a lot. That's very true. So, is this something you talk about with your kids, or is it how have your experiences influenced how you parent?
We talked about it. I know during the last presidential elections, it was an issue that we don't really talk too much about politics at home, because I don't know, it just isn't something that interests me too much. But it was something that you just couldn't avoid, that during the last elections, because the far right was gaining a lot of popularity. And so even if I didn't talk about it at school, talk about it at home, the kids heard about it at school. Like even my son, who is 6 years old, he knows the names of, all these different politicians. And like, if their face comes on TV, he goes, oh, that's so and so. I'm like, okay, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, because, we talk about it too. So it's something that I can't really avoid, and I don't try to shelter them from it, but I do talk to them and explain to them that, this person believes this and I don't believe the same way as them. That doesn't make them a bad person. That just means that we don't agree, and this is the reason why. So I do try to explain things to them, and then have them also ask me questions about, if they see something or if they hear something at school, and I'll say, oh, what do you think about that? Tell me why do you think that person said that, or how does that make you feel when someone says something about you or your friend that looks different than you? So we do try to keep an open conversation in that way with our kids.
That's great. That's very valuable for them too, to learn that that's normal, that you don't have to agree with every person of power, every important person. It's okay to ask questions. That's a good skill. Do you do anything else as a family to help introduce them to other cultures or help them stay connected to your culture?
I do have them, I try to get them to be more involved with my family, because my family's so far away. Like, for example, my dad came here the year before last, I believe, and took them for the summer for like 1 month to the States. And I have some friends, when I told them that, they were like, what? Like, your kids are going for, a month? And, oh, I would never do that. I could never do that. And I'm like, well, I trust my dad.
Right.
And I think it'll be a good experience for them to go see my other family members in the States, and to be able to hear other people besides mom speak English. And even though they talk to them on the phone, but to be in a situation where it's every day, and there's not just going to be some, French relief. Like, if you turn on the TV, it's going to be all English all the time. And they were fine. Like, they visited like 3 different cities in the US. They were with different family members, and I also want them to become independent in that way, that they don't feel like, oh, once I'm not near mom and dad, I have to be afraid, or just to like learn to be independent in that sense, to make small decisions on their own without us being there all the time. Last year, we also sent them to my in-laws in the north of France as well, so that they can also, get that experience too.
So you're exposing them to different lifestyles and different cultures outside of the one in your home. That's great. So do you guys speak English at home, or is it a mixture of languages?
Well, I've always spoken English to them, like from day one when they were born. I spoke English to my daughter all the time, even if, like, at school in front of friends, like, I didn't feel like, oh, I need to switch over because maybe the other person might feel comfortable. I just never thought that that would be an issue, because growing up, it was the same way for me. My mom would speak to me in our local language, speak to me in Ghana. Whether it was just us or if there were friends over, she would still speak to me in Ghana. But if she was addressing my friends, then she would speak to them in English, of course. And I never thought that was strange. So I did the same thing with my kids, because I want them to be able to speak English to my family members. I don't speak to them in Ghana, which I probably should have done, but I am more fluent in the sense, like, I understand it all. But since when I was little, I didn't speak it to my mom. She spoke it to me, and I answered her back in English. So I understand it, but I have a little trouble sometimes speaking it. And then with my husband, I speak French. So it's like a little triangle at home. I speak English to the kids and French to my husband, and they speak French to each other, my kids. And now my daughter is just starting to speak to me in English, which I didn't think was going to happen, because in the beginning, she would do the same thing I did when I was a kid, meaning that I would speak to her in English, and she would answer me back in French. And I would try to say, oh, mom doesn't understand, you have to say it in English. And she'd be like, I'm going to speak French anyway.
She's like, I know you understand until you try.
Yeah.
How old is your daughter now?
She's 12 now.
12. That is, I ask that because I know a lot of people here who are doing the same thing, who are, in our case, they speak Spanish to their kids and their kids answer in English. So that's very encouraging to hear that even if they don't do it right away, it might happen. It could happen in the future.
And I had friends that told me that when she was younger. They said, "Oh, don't worry, she'll come around because then she'll realize it's kind of like a, I don't know if it's a cool thing, but it kind of sets her apart from her friends and makes her." And it's funny because here, when you speak English, it's kind of seen as like chic. It's like in the U.S. when people like pepper their words with little French words, like they'll say like ooh
Mm-hmm.
la la. Here, people will like pepper their words with English words. It's funny. So it's like when you speak English fluently and say things in English, people will look like, oh, she's kind of a
She's
little
cool.
sophisticated. Yeah. So I think she takes advantage of that now. She
That's
likes speaking
good.
English.
That's good. That makes her in the cool crowd. That's good. Is there anything else you and your family do to sort of embrace diversity in other cultures together?
I think we just, try to have a group of friends that are as diverse as we can find. I don't purposely go out looking for people say, oh, you're going to be my friend because you're not diverse and you're different than me. But if there, someone in my group of friends who may be a little different from us based on whatever reason, with religion or sex or race or whatever, like we embrace it. We don't hold it back. Like we have a group of friends who are, there's like, Arabic people, and there's some Muslim friends, there's some that, that are religious, some that don't believe in religion, and like we get together and we hang out and, have like, fun. We'll go have barbecues and like parties together, and they just see that it's normal to be around people of all different backgrounds, and it's not a thing, it's not an issue. They're just Uncle so and so, and it's fine.
Right, right. That's great. And I feel like that is an intentional choice though, because it's easier sometimes to surround yourself with people who are like you and think like you. So
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a little extra work to have that eclectic group of different mindsets. So that's good for you. Good work. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story and sharing a little bit about your life with us. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything else you want us to know?
um no, I think I hope that people who are watching, they feel like they won't be afraid to take a chance and maybe meet someone new or someone different, and give them a chance, because you never know. They might be just like you. They might not look like you, but they might have, the same favorite shows as you and laugh at the same things as you, even though they eat different food and speak a different language. Like, you just never know what you could be missing out on if you don't give someone else a chance to get to know you.
That is very, very true. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you for sharing with us. It was very helpful and very informative. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I loved that conversation with Nadua so much because she is embracing diversity with her family through everyday life. And it's not just because she's lived across 3 continents that she's able to do that. She has realized that there's no reason to fear differences. And so instead of shying away from them, she is open to conversing about them. She is open to exposing her children to them. And she's open to just living life among people as people, regardless of what they look like, their religion, their beliefs, their ideas. And I want that for you too, because we all have that ability. So in the link below, you can sign up to receive these 14 ways to embrace diversity with your family today. They're super simple, super easy, something that each and every one of you can do. And you'll receive information to guide you through this process to help you embrace diversity alongside your children from the comfort of your own home without needing to live across 3 different continents. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy embracing diversity together with your family.